Gabriel Cleveland is a poet and fiction writer with an MFA from the Solstice MFA in Creative Writing program. Along with John Cusack Handler, he co-edited Places We Return to, a 20th century anniversary retrospective on the publishing history of the press. An avid video gamer and music lover, he hosts the Andover Special, a weekly internet radio program on Homegrown Radio NJ. Gabriel is also a mental health advocate, often working online to raise awareness, visibility, and money for psychological and psychosocial issues. He has spent several years in the field of caregiving for people with increased physical and/or mental needs, and wants you to know that you are not alone. So everyone, let's welcome Gabriel Cleveland, and if you could please, if you haven't already, mute your microphones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you all for being here. If you hear weird whistling noises, it's because it's like 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts outside here. So, anyway, so it goes. All right, so just a little more about me. After the past several years of increasingly stagnant creative energy, last year I finally sort of like turned a corner. I finished a full-length collection and I wrote a chapbook, both of which I'm currently shopping around, hint, hint, right, to those who are rewatching the video. But no, I really only bring that up as a framework for this reading, because both collections start in painful places. One of them is specifically focused on suicidality and, certain people that I know dying by suicide as well. I'm not reading those direct poems tonight, but the theme is there. So any of the poems from that will be there. So just a heads up to those who might be sensitive to that. But, both collections also move, however slowly, toward self-renewal and joy. I've taken the artistic liberty of mashing them together, some might argue violently, for this set. The collection opens, my main collection, which is called The Thrill of Finding, Fear of Being Found / The Thrill of Finding, opens with these lines from the poem Apology, which is really just an apology to myself, which says, "I struggle to uplift, to submit myself to the open door of joy." But we'll get there. But for reasons that should become apparent, I also think it's dangerous to turn wholly away from the pain and thus never learn how to cope with it in a healthy way. Because really, especially these days, it's everywhere. You look everywhere you look on the freaking internet, can't get away from it. With that in mind, my first poem is called Confirm Your Humanity. And this deals a little with body image issues as well. Skin deltas shimmer across my waist as I rotate like a minor planet in the mirror. A vein lightning bolts from my right eye, and I've lost count of the times I've had to explain to my loved ones that, yes, it's always been there. I'm a memory warehouse of their words, or at least the cynical, judgmental ones casually discarded from their lips, gathering dust like my hair in every corner of my place. The CAPTCHA attached to Steam wants me to verify my humanity before I can return to warping my back for hours playing video games, as if that's not human enough on its own. So now I'm questioning myself, plunging internet philosophy websites, seeking reassurance in ones and zeros. Elon Musk, great genius that he is, bought into the theory that we could all be simulated. I'm not convinced yet. I scrutinize each seemingly random spot on my splotchy arms, the Tetris-shaped scar on my right elbow from grappling into a brick wall, the faint wave airbag burn on my left, which reblooms with summer heat, the teardrop mark on my right wrist from the beak of a tossed ketchup bottle, Could these all be part of some inhuman design? I return to myself in the mirror, trying to separate what I see from what I've been programmed to see. Each line on my face a sign of laughter, a grimace, or age. My limbs toned enough to suggest a grace at odds with the tank of my shoulders and chest, the inescapable jug that is my gut, my slight breasts that, yes, exist enough to have elicited snide remarks, and the echo of every ad I've ever heard about how bad it is to be fat, and every weight loss product that will save me from damnation. And I surrender to not knowing what part of me, if any, is real. No, wait, fuck that. I write a poem with my DNA to prove I'm human. First one. All right. Well, the auxiliary camera that I had set up has officially dropped, but I caught it very smoothly. All right. This next one is the opening poem from the chapbook, which I said at the top is an extended metaphor and meditation on suicidality, given tangible form in this collection as and referred to as the serial killer, plural shape-shifting entity that occupies, you know, the passenger seat in the car on the drive of life, you might say. I personally had one what I would call serious bout with suicidality. It was short, fortunately. I'm here, fortunately, but it happened, you know, when I was in 6th grade. And as I'll talk about later some more, that, you know, it never leaves you once those thoughts enter your mind. You're aware of the fact that those thoughts, you're vulnerable to those thoughts. But, you know, I wanted to say thank you to all the folks that I loved so much at the time, that it canceled out how little I cared for myself and kept me here. So that's part of what this collection is about as well. But yeah, part one for the chapbook is called Not Going Anywhere. That's the name of the whole chapbook. The serial killer appeared to me first as a child in the snow. They wore a face much like my own, but darkened by shadow, and spoke in a whisper, flakes falling in the wind. The serial killer asked if I would join them, voice shaking like the echo of long forgotten pleasure, and I could tell tears streamed to ice on their cheeks. I left them in the cold, saved perhaps by nothing more than an empty stomach, a desire to feel warmth, a sense that somewhere far away, someone held my name on their lips. They did not mourn my loss. I turned from the door for one last glance at nothing. The poem that I excerpted at the very beginning, Apology, you know, says, I want to lighten up, and really I do, but it doesn't always come easy to me. So to quote that poem again, in another part of it, this poem is not helping. So envision it delivered by a man with a piñata head. So with that in mind, let's have a snack, shall we? This one goes out to my other constant companion. You know, I mentioned the serial killer as one. This one goes out to my other constant companion. It's called Doritos Flamin' Hot Nacho. That's right, we're on a roller coaster today. And it begins with the epigraph, bet you can't eat just one. Like that old Lay's bet, the moment a chip touches my lips, I transform to a salt and crunch addict. The savory cheese with its aggressive heat emerging in aftertaste from tortillas, perfectly textured, edges rounded with a thickness designed to crumble at the slightest pressure from my teeth and to drop flavor like a gift onto every scorched taste bud. And I overeat them. which is to say I eat them at all. Nose running, lips tingled numb, coughing fiery dust from my lungs like a cartoon cheetah, throat clogged with napalm saliva, mouth leaving neon red smears on napkins like tubercular blood. In an hour, it stings when I pee. A couple more and my intestines squeeze like a fist. In a decade or two, they'll probably be banned carcinogens, but for now, I chase their flames with clementine crescents that burst with flavor, rendered twice as vivid to my tongue's eager, swollen receptors. You see, I will embrace a great deal of pain if it tastes good and sweetness follows. All right. This next one is about a place I loved, which for a brief ephemeral time was all the world I needed it to be. It's called Elegy for a Pro Boards Forum. And it's for Bob, Kyle, Kenny, Justin, Amy, Rob, and AJ. The first two are the ones that I'm referring to at the beginning in this poem. But anyway, God, how I missed the goat pen. That was the name of the forum. Long story. God, how I missed the goat pen when I was a teenager and the worst president we thought we'd ever have was W, and the internet wasn't an endless ad for the apocalypse. How it was the place I found kinship with two relative loners my age in Wisconsin and Cali over a love of Final Fantasy and crafting stories where half the villains turned out to be doofuses, and talking goldfish and random house fires were comedy bits. Comedy gold, I might add. And one of us would bend the plot to give himself an excuse to flex his coding or write some truly stupid songs for laughs. That one was me. We retconned and role-played video game characters daily. Renoa, now a vainglorious sorceress with her ridiculous cult. Once homicidal, Sephiroth just another schmo managing a bookstore. And all those overly lionized heroes with a newfound liberty to not give a damn, with the world largely saved and rendered ludicrous. We stayed up hours to plunge the depths of each other's flailing minds and navigate the minefields of adolescence over aim, suicidal, alcoholic, disaffected, girl crazed, or depersonalized, or some concoction of all of them. We typed through it all. For these strangers closer than schoolmates, I flew across the country twice to road trip from one home to the other. For me, they wrote their shares of a novel that will probably never be published, but which still brings me joy. A collaboration where every character I made, yes, even the assholes, was some facet of me I needed to figure out. They built a world for me, like understand here, they built a world for me. And now the forum where it all went down is a ghost town. And the places most people, myself included, gather online are full of double talk, political manipulation, and marketing. It's enough to make you want to die. And I get the feeling that's kind of the point. Desperate people, after all, are easiest to exploit, and how better to drive despair than to pave over paradise yet again. For Christ's sakes, even Big Yellow Taxi cuts to a DraftKings spot on YouTube, but that kind of proves Joni's point after all, doesn't it? All right. Prepare yourselves. We're back to not going anywhere. Part 8. Again, this is that chapbook focusing on suicidality. In part 12, just a little teaser. I'm not going to read the whole of that, but I say it's just once you've met the serial killer, you will always know the serial killer, and you will always feel their presence somewhere. So here's part 8. The serial killer reclines in the wicker chaise longue outside on my balcony. Strangely enough, even in winter, especially in winter, frozen drifts accumulate, then melt on the serial killer's skin. They say it's nice to feel something when warmth returns and numbness gives way to the tingling sensation. That I totally understand. Legs crossed until they turn to rubber, until I have to unfold them by hand, pins and needles, a dizzying delight. The serial killer reminds me I could easily climb over the 4-foot railing to fly, if only for a moment. They point out the New York City skyline where the world ended back when I was 13. They remind me again about the stars swallowed in the haze of light. I tell them I don't really mind the glowing sky. You know, it has something of a warmth about it. But I do have to concede it makes it harder to sleep. Well, you know where to find me, the serial killer says, and I slide the door closed with a bang. That was ended with a sound there, so I'm gonna do this next one, which is called I Can Walk in Silence. It's sort of about capturing the different sounds in there. And this was inspired when my headphones ran out, or my phone shut down in the middle of my walk. I walk all the time. But, you know, sometimes you just got to walk in silence, and that's what this one's about. I can walk in silence. Yes, I can walk in silence. I can move to the sound of my quiet thoughts. I can walk in silence. The wind whips my skin beneath my threadbare shirt. I can walk in silence. Cars roll by like oceans, the occasional bumping call of jumping bass, grating growls of planes as they scrape through sky. I can walk in silence. The tap, tap, tap of my idle headphone cord, the flapping flag smacking its frozen pole, the popping of my bones with every step. I can walk in silence, believe me. Saliva squelches within my cheeks. See, there's that wind I'm talking about. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is loud. All right. I can walk in silence. Saliva squelches within my cheeks, the steady weight of my heavy breath, the shutter clicking of my eyelids. Yes, I can walk in silence. Can't necessarily read a poem in silence though with the wind. But that's fine because the wind also plays a prominent role in this next poem called Kite, which I've been told is a favorite. So, you know, buckle up. About a mile into the Henry Hudson Drive, overlooking the sun-licked George Washington Bridge, there is a kite twisted and snared on an errant branch. For over a year now, I've passed by and watched it fade. Judging by the old Pabst and Corona in the gutter along the sheer rock wall it faces, maybe it's been more of a spectator event than you'd imagine. Or maybe our littering is just more out of hand than I thought, cans cascading all the way up 200 feet of stone. But back to the kite. The way it hangs there, contorted into a submarine's silhouette, weakly tilting from side to side, most of the fight long gone from its frame, marionette of a disinterested twig. If only it could reach those little wooden fingers that hold its fate, surely, it thinks, it would snap them and be free to soar the sky once more. But let's be reasonable now. It is in no shape to fly. It would sink to the ground like I would if I were drowning in the center of the ocean. In a way, this is at least kinder than the dump, a mobile for those who notice, a reminder of strings that we cannot see holding us in place, a chance at visitation for the child that lost it to begin with. Watch how it comes to life in the breeze. I haven't dared look on a night like tonight when Fort Lee gusts hit 50 miles an hour. It must think itself released, thunderous in the squall, violent with the fearsome energy of something new, a vibrant flash of purple and blue, exuberance so strong its thin skin tears with the wind. I'm not enough of a poet for that raw terror or beauty. So circling back to the chapbook, the reason I wanted to share some of this tonight is because, as I say in part 13, again, here's another teaser, The serial killer craves the reduction of a person to a statistic, the confusion, the erasure of a human. The serial killer is grateful for your silence, for the died suddenly in vague obituaries. The serial killer benefits from the society that denies there is a serial killer. The serial killer speaks to people when no one else will listen. The serial killer is patient, but they never have to wait for long. The psychological, mental plight of our fellow humans is something that I tend to focus on a lot, as evidenced by my bio and these poems. It just, all I can keep saying is be kind, even when people aren't being kind themselves, you don't know what they're going through. I had two people that I knew, one closely and one that I worked with in the past, died by suicide in 2022. And they weren't the first people I knew either. So, that said, I want to share the final lines of part 16 as a segue, because for me, somewhere along the line, I realized I had to accept and embrace that awful part of myself in order to begin really, truly healing. Stigmatization, not talking about it, that just makes it more potent and more dangerous. So part 16 ends with the declaration: I'll go out with the serial killer. I will pull them to the dance floor. I will shout until I'm heard over the thundering bass. Heads will turn in time to see the serial killer imprisoned in my embrace, lit up in the strobes. I have a couple more, if that's okay. I know getting pretty close to the time, I think. Rambled a little more than I intended. But anyway, hearing no objections, I will continue. So coming to that turning point for me really helped open myself up to people and possibilities that were deeply suppressed for me for a long time. And well, interestingly enough, I'm somewhere like 3/5 of the way down the asexual spectrum, as it turns out. I'm also hyper romantic, which is a really fun combo. I can fall for people on one hand. So, that's what this next poem is about. It's called I Want to Get Into Your Heart, Not Your Pants. Look, I'm not trying to lay you down in an ocean of linen like two submarines converging on the geothermal depths. I just want to know how you feel about the open sea. If the endless expanse trembles your skeleton and your nerves flare like you'll surely be devoured. I want to know if you feel the same as me, cumbersome yet insignificant, like a sun-peeled empty shack. I'm not asking you to rattle its walls with me until they collapse. I dream of lining them with artifacts unearthed by exploring the frontier mindscape that stretches out from me to you. I don't need you to want to pounce when I pass like a house cat on a quivering vole, nails entrenched in my shoulders, teeth ferocious for my neck. I yearn to nestle down by your side and learn the meaning behind the subtle sounds of your breathing. And I want you to choose to do the same. Okay. How to Savor an Avocado. Another passion poem of mine. With your hands, cradle its fullness and its weight. Press the ridges of your fingerprints against its small black bumps as it gives itself, but slightly, into your grip. Twist the stem for a green peak within, then halve it. Crescent movement of your knife. Hold the fruit along its newfound seam and repeat your cut for quarters to unfold, lotus-like, from its tender wooden heart. Pinch the corner of the skin and peel slowly, unsealing an envelope, thumb at rest in the concave of its verdant flesh, two fingers arched along its back. Welcome it to your mouth, the secret you repeat upon first hearing until it's part of you. Introduce it to each of your teeth. Let it swaddle the enamel before it ever meets your throat. Like desperately good news, swallow slowly, so it will last. Okay, I will skip this one for now. If there's time later, maybe I'll read it. I have the closing poem from the chapbook and the closing poem from the main manuscript, and that will do it if that's okay. So I would hate to not give you the conclusion to Not Going Anywhere, because that's, you know, where it all built up toward. So part 17, Not Going Anywhere, begins with the epigraph. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. The serial killer is someone I've always known, really, even before we met. They swam in my bloodstream, more intimate than a lover. They watched child me tumble over words thick on my tongue, stumble toward adolescence in this ever ungainly frame, and finally claim that I was ready to die, only to change my mind time after time after time. And they've stayed by me, because what else can you do with a life like this? There's a poem taped to my mirror. I read it whenever I need it. You've passed your most dangerous, difficult test if the one in the glass is your friend. For years, I couldn't look the serial killer in the eye. I couldn't accept that I could love the same one who's asked me to leave this world more times than I could count. I couldn't take knowing that person was me. For years, I let the serial killer steal my voice, curl me into a cocoon, island my mind into a horizonless sea. And yet, here they are, still with me after all these years, not going anywhere. Two can play at that game. Join me. Keep me company while I unfurl my sails, as my wings fan out, as I open my mouth to speak and catch wind. And, you know, the wind almost came perfectly on cue there. That was pretty nice touch there, yeah. All right, so final poem from the big manuscript is called This is a Gleeful Poem. And thank you again so much for listening and giving me just a little extra time. This is a gleeful poem with the smell of manure dimmed and sweetened with familiarity, with a blanket of barnyard kittens too soft for metaphor, mulberry stains in rivulets across our hands and cheeks, and the cream of fresh milk still wet on our lips. The straw pile holds no hidden pitchfork, and we throw ourselves from the attic through 20 feet of air into its scratchy embrace, then dash, giddy, back inside, climb as fast as our limbs will take us to the ledge where we leap again and again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Trying to leave it all on the table, you know, first featured reading, got to make a good impression. So I hope I did. And thank you so much for the applause and the comments in the chat box that I'm just now seeing. I'm really grateful. So
lots of people commenting. Great reading, says Roderick. Wonderful, says Melanie. It's awesome. And now we open the floor to any questions or appreciative comments that you may have for Gabriel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to listen to you. And yeah, that wind was perfect timing.
Yeah, you know, I planned it that way.
Yeah.
And being able to share this with, you know, both literal and personal chosen family, you know, all of the above, makes it all the more special as well. You know, parts of these poems, you know, these collections are obviously a bit vulnerable, and some of them maybe haven't read all of them or seen all of them. So it's like, surprise, here's more details about me, the inside scoop. But yeah, it's you know, again, I say that in a humorous tone, but it all boils down to just my being grateful for this opportunity.
I like, oh,
Gabriel, I really appreciated all the poetry, but your insight in sort of putting language around suicide and a lot of thoughts where I think people, they have faith or they don't have faith, but they don't know how to steady their voice. And you did and gave us great insight. My nephew committed suicide a year ago. So it's interesting how people go silent, but poets like you can give great insight. So I appreciate that.
Well, I am very sorry to hear about that loss. And, you know, I think that's all it's things like that. Anyone says something like that to me, or I find out that someone knows someone close to them who died. And I just think, you know, we all live our own quiet lives, especially when it comes to the painful parts. You know, we can be loud in so many other ways and demonstrative, and then suffer in silence. And I think, you know, especially the thing about suicide and suicidality being what it is, being so stigmatized in society that people are afraid to even talk about it, keeps it this one monolithic horror, which it is, of course, but it's more than that, you know, and which I tried to capture with the framework in this chapbook, of it as a corporeal entity, something that can be as intimate as it is menacing, something that can be as casual and friendly even, and alluring in ways that make the menace of it 3 times more potent, if not more so. And I think that's something that people lack, or something that people miss when they think about, you know, oh, this person's suicidal. What does that mean? It means a lot of things, you know, and I've talked to a lot of people who were in the middle of it, who, you know, you see that the reflection of the serial killer, like, standing in their eyes. And it's you have to keep your heart open, no matter how painful it sometimes is, right?
I think that it's good that this is recorded, because everything you just said is another poem, and it was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a question in there from Andrea asking if I have any writers who've influenced my writing about those topics, or who my artistic influences are in general. Those of you who didn't catch the intro at the beginning, I work at Cavan Carey Press, so the majority of the books that I read are manuscripts that are submitted before approval. So I get very little time to read any other books for pleasure. So I don't have a great answer for that. I just, you know, I listen to a ton of music because it's a little more quickly digestible, and I'm a radio host, so it's good for me to have a repertoire. But I think I just am gravitated to anyone who shines a light on, you know, the reality of human emotion. And I'm sorry that I don't have any, you know, easy answers at the moment. You know, certainly several of the folks that I work with who are in the audience come to mind: Kat Doty, Savino Orlowski, Maria Luisa Arroyo Cruzado. and I'm not only saying that to pander because, you know, there's some inherent pandering, but your writing means a lot to me as well, you know. So check them out. Their names are in the participant list, and Google is a thing. So yeah. I see Pam saying the concept of the serial killer was a strong and effective metaphor. Yeah, you know, it's, I feel like I was writing that poem in the back of my head for 2 decades. I don't know. And then when my friend disappeared and ultimately was ruled probable death by suicide, in April of last year, it just all came to the surface, and I wrote the majority of that 17-part poem. I wrote, I think, 14 parts of it in one afternoon, because it was finally time. I looked at myself in the mirror and I nodded at myself. I said, all right, you're not doing your normal work today. It's knocking and you have to answer the door. And it just came to me. I don't know how, but like I said, I do know how I lived it. I lived it for so long before it ever came out.
Well, that is powerful. And as Melissa said, my heart feels a million things. Beautifully done. And I feel the same way. So
Well, thank you so much again. And if it wouldn't be too much trouble, I have like a 20-second poem that I'd like to dedicate to all the open mic readers if we're transitioning out of the Q&A. Of course, if there's another question, speak now or forever hold your peace, right? But if that's okay, I would like to read it.
of course, real quickly though, I just wanted to say that I did really appreciate the kite poem. And I don't think you said it, but I got this idea of kite and skin.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. I refer to it as it's thin skin
okay, so
in the
you
wind
did
or
say
something
it.
like that. Yeah.
Well, I liked that imagery of skin being so thin like a kite.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that. And then in one of your other poems, I really appreciated the line, like good news, swallow slowly so it can last.
Thank you.
That
Yeah.
really struck me.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really love that poem, is like I really stuck the landing on that one. It doesn't always happen. But yeah, thank you very much. And you know, my dear friend Kat sent me a direct message. I'm going to out her. She said, I so admire your generosity and bravery. And you know, I appreciate that sentiment, but I think the way I see it is less of an act of bravery and more an act of necessity when it comes to talking about the things that hurt so many of us, the things that leave us in positions of vulnerability where we end up hurting one another, where we end up, you know, breaking apart from one another. All of that, you know, again, it's an act of survival. It's an act of, someone else said an act of survival in the chat earlier, and it's an act of, like I said, necessity. Yeah, Maria Luisa said intentional acts of survival. So yeah, that's, you know, writing with intention. That's a big part of it for me. So again, thank you for letting me have this spotlight and share the evening with you. And now I really look forward to hearing your poems as well. So I want to close with this poem and dedicate it to all the open mic readers and to all of you who I may hear another time, even if it's not tonight. It's called Speak. If we're alone and nothing like us lives across this endless galaxy, throughout this ever-growing universe, if cosmic silence is deafening Every whisper that escapes your lips is the loudest sound in existence. And I'm lucky, we're lucky, just to listen. Thanks again.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Let's all give one more round of applause. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing a part of yourself. That was definitely sharing a part of yourself. So
Yeah. It's been an honor. So thank you. I will probably turn off my camera so I can actually change my setup and sit down.